I was halfway up the mountain road, tires crunching over gravel, expecting nothing more than a peaceful weekend at my grandfather's old cabin. The place had been in the family for decades, a little wooden structure tucked into the trees, overlooking a quiet river. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I'd stocked up on supplies, downloaded a few offline playlists, and was looking forward to 2 uninterrupted days of fresh air and 0 emails. But then I saw it. A massive steel gate now stood across the narrow dirt road just a few hundred feet from the turnoff to my property. It wasn't just a chain or some caution tape. This thing was bolted into the ground with concrete footers. A shiny red and white HOA sign was zip-tied to the middle. Access restricted, entry revoked until further notice. I hit the brakes. So hard the dust rose in clouds around me. For a second, I just sat there in disbelief. I got out and walked up to the gate, looking for a keypad or a contact number. Nothing. Just that sign, like a warning slapped onto a crime scene. I tried to see if I could squeeze past the edge or turn around, but the road was too narrow and flanked by thick brush. There was no way in without going through that gate. My cabin, less than a mile away, might as well have been on another planet. Pulling out my phone, I scrolled through the HOA contact list and called Cheryl Adams, the current HOA president. She picked up after a few rings, sounding cheerful, until she realized who was calling. "Cheryl," I said, keeping my tone calm, "why is there a gate blocking access to my cabin?" There was a pause. Then, she said, "We had to restrict access to certain areas due to non-compliance with HOA regulations. Your property hasn't been maintaining proper landscaping, and we've received complaints about unauthorized wood cutting. Until those matters are resolved, we've restricted vehicle access." I blinked, dumbfounded. That cabin's been in my family since before this HOA even existed. I didn't agree to any of this, and I haven't cut down a single tree. "Well," she said smugly, "our records say otherwise. You can appeal it at the next monthly board meeting, assuming the motion isn't final by then." I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were clenched around the steering wheel, jaw tight. This wasn't just bureaucracy, it felt personal. I'd barely interacted with the HOA aside from a few emails over the years. Now, out of nowhere, they were locking me out of my own land. But as I sat there in silence, something came back to me, a memory of my grandfather's voice. Years ago, he had told me, "If they ever try to mess with you, remember what's really yours. They don't even realize what we own out here." At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now, it sounded like a clue. Back home, I dumped a dusty cardboard box of old paperwork onto the kitchen table. Faded manila folders, brittle receipts, tax forms, and property documents spilled out in every direction. Somewhere in this mess had to be what my grandfather was talking about. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for, but I knew I'd recognize it when I saw it. My fingers worked through the pile like a miner panning for gold. Half the pages were nearly illegible, stained by age or water damage. I found a few survey maps, some old letters from the county, even a black and white photo of the cabin from the 1960s. Then, buried in the middle of a faded leather-bound folder, I found it. The original deed to the property, dated 1958. I held it up like it was a treasure map. The document wasn't very long, but every word felt like it weighed 10 pounds. As I skimmed it, my eyes caught on a paragraph near the bottom, written in that elegant old legalese. Said property includes full and unrestricted access rights to the wooden bridge crossing Maple Run Creek, including full ownership of the bridge, structure and 40-foot perimeter on either side, extending up to the public roadway. I sat back in my chair, stunned. I read it again, then again. It wasn't just access, it was ownership. The wooden bridge, the one everyone in the neighborhood used to get in and out, belonged to me. The same bridge I crossed every time. I went to the cabin. The same bridge they'd built their fancy new gate after. They hadn't blocked my access. They'd built a barrier on my land. Suddenly, it all clicked into place. When the HOA was formed in the early 2000s, no one had looked into the exact land boundaries. They assumed the bridge was part of the community's shared infrastructure. But it never was. It was part of the original parcel my grandfather purchased, before the area was ever developed. They'd built roads, homes, even utilities, all based on that one wrong assumption. And now they were locking me out, on property they didn't even own. The implications were enormous. If I controlled the bridge, I didn't just control access to my cabin. I controlled the only way in or out of the entire neighborhood. There was no alternate route. Every single homeowner, every car, every delivery, they all relied on crossing my bridge. I grabbed my phone and snapped a photo of the deed. Then I started making a list. First, I needed to confirm the boundary lines with the county. Second, I'd call a real estate attorney. Third, I'd figure out exactly how much I was legally allowed to do, because if the HOA wanted to play games, fine. But they'd picked the wrong person, on the wrong piece of land. They thought they had all the power. They had no idea the ground they were standing on wasn't even theirs. By sunrise the next morning, I was parked on the south side of the bridge. My side. The air was crisp, and the mist hung low over the river like a warning. I'd barely slept. My mind had been racing all night, fueled by a mix of anger and adrenaline. But now, everything was in motion. A locksmith arrived at 6:15 a.m., right on time. He was a no-nonsense guy who didn't ask many questions. I showed him the deed, explained that I owned the bridge, and pointed out the brand-new HOA gate illegally, installed on my property. "You want it rekeyed or replaced?" he asked. "Replaced," I said, "and add a chain and padlock, just to be safe." By 7 a.m., the HOA's gate was gone. In its place stood a thick iron chain looped across, the entrance locked tight with a bright silver padlock. Above it, I had posted 2 laminated signs: "Private property, no trespassing access by owner's permission, only." I poured myself a cup of coffee from a thermos and leaned against my truck. Then I waited. The first car showed up a little after 7:30, a black SUV driven by none other than Cheryl Adams. She hit the brakes hard when she saw the chain. Her mouth fell open in shock, and she fumbled with her phone before stepping out. "You can't do this," she barked, storming toward me. "This is community access. You're blocking the whole subdivision." I took a slow sip of coffee. "No, I'm securing my property. This bridge belongs to me. Your gate was illegally installed on land I own. You've been trespassing, Cheryl." She scoffed. "That's ridiculous. This bridge has always been part of the neighborhood." "Nope," I said, pulling a plastic folder from the passenger seat and opening it to the deed I had copied and highlighted. "This says otherwise. You should have done your homework before trying to lock me out." By now, more cars were backing up behind her. People were stepping out, confused and irritated. Phones were coming out. A couple residents started yelling. But I didn't move. I didn't need to. "Look," Cheryl said, trying to compose herself. "Let's be reasonable. You can't cut the whole neighborhood off just because of a disagreement." "You're right," I said. "Let's be reasonable. Remove the gate, drop the violations, and stay off my property unless you have permission. Then we can talk." She glared at me, jaw clenched. "You're going to regret this." "I already did," I replied calmly. The second I trusted the HOA to act in good faith. As she stormed off to make more calls, I stood quietly, watching the scene unfold. In one move, the balance of power had shifted. They thought I was just another homeowner with no say. They forgot that this wasn't their land. It was mine, and I'd just pulled the only ladder out from under them.